Hey there, happy coders, and welcome to a special Halloween edition of these code along videos. I have a little kind of spooky project that I want to work on today. So over the last few days, I've been working through going back and uploading a bunch of examples I made for CC Fest a few years ago, or a couple years ago. So what's the best way to look at those? So I've been posting them on Twitter, but if you go to happycoding.io, you can go to the P5 examples, and there's quite a few kind of Halloween-y themed examples that I used during CC Fest a couple years ago. And if I go into one, let's see if I can find a fun one, Ghost. So it's like this animated ghost thing, and that came from this printout that I created. So I've been in the Halloween mood for a few days now, and honestly probably for a couple months now, because I love Halloween. But so anyway, the idea for today's video is to build on some of these ideas, and especially this ghost one. Actually, I want to maybe go back and talk about some of the concepts that I used here, specifically trigonometry and the sine function to create an animation. Because I didn't make a video when I created this a couple years ago, so I'm going to kind of just make a video playing with these concepts. So my goal today is to make like an animated text kind of wavy thing. It's hard to explain, but I have it pictured in my brain, which is always a problem. But it's going to kind of animate in from the left side of the screen and just kind of wave as it goes to the left, as it says a message, maybe a spooky message, or maybe just hello world or something. We'll see. But it'll be an excuse for me to play around with the sine function and talk about trig for a minute. I'm not super mathy, so I'm going to kind of talk about trig and sine and maybe cosine from the perspective of using it in a P5 sketch to create an animation. Maybe eventually I'll do something a little bit longer that's all about, the actual math behind it. But for our purposes, I don't know if we care. Okay, cool. So that's kind of the intro. That's kind of my plan for the next. I always give myself a time limit, and then I always just disobey it at the end. So I don't know. I'm just going to play around for a while. Okay, so what am I going to do? I'm going to do what I always do by going to the P5 editor to start with. And this will give me my gray canvas when I hit run. I've got my code over here and my canvas over here. All right. So just to talk about the function that we're about to call. So first of all, we could go to the P5 reference and read more info here. So I think if I control F for sine, you've got some trig functions here. And if you're not super familiar with any of them, you can read through it. I'm actually curious about what this says. Yeah, okay, so here's really the important part. So values that are returned are in the range -1 to 1. So the sine function takes a number and then returns to you a number that kind of bounces back and forth between -1 and 1. And that becomes pretty handy in animations and whatnot. So just to show you kind of what that might look like, let's do something like this. Let me do like console.log of sine of 0. So I'm just going to print out a value to the console down here at the very beginning. And so sine of 0 is 0. Okay, not too exciting, but it is what it is. There it is. So now I'm going to pass in sine of 1. And so sine of 1 is 0.84, blah, 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 blah. And then let me maybe say like sine of 2 or so. And now it's 0.9. So I think it's kind of going up. So maybe if I say 3, what's it going to be? So now it's going way back down. So actually, let me look at that. So 1 was 0.8, 2 is 0.9. Yeah, I think what might be happening is that the numbers I'm passing in are kind of too far apart. So let me maybe start with 0, right? And so that's 0. We knew that. So let me change that to like 0.1. 0.1. Sine of 0.1 is 0.09. Okay, let me change it to 2. And okay, 0.19, and you can kind of see that it's going to go up 0.29. So let me jump ahead to 0.5 maybe. Yeah, we're getting closer to 1. Maybe go to 0.75. So that's 0.68. And as I get bigger, does it get closer to 1? Yeah, it's getting closer and closer. So I don't remember what sine of 1 was anymore, but it's 0.84. So let's go to like 1.2 maybe. So you see that like as we increase this number, it's getting closer and closer to 1, and eventually it'll like hit 1 and then go back down. I don't know exactly where that's going to happen. So at 1.5, we're like pretty close to 1, and so now if I go to like 1.75, it's going to start coming back down. Or wait, no, it didn't. What was I just at? 1.5 was 0.99. Oh, right. So 0.99 back down to 0.98. Let's jump back up to 2 maybe. And it's going back down. So you can kind of pass in these numbers to get a sense of, the numbers that you get back, but they're going to be between -1 and 1. So a couple important things to notice is that this number can be anything. It can be really big, and the number you get back is still going to be somewhere between -1 and 1. And like we already saw, the numbers that you pass in, like if you increase the number that you're passing in by too much, then the number down here will change quite a bit as well. So you try to pass in numbers that are kind of closer to each other to get a smoother difference between one number and the other. That doesn't make sense right now because it's just like one number here, but it'll make more sense once we get something showing on the screen. Okay, whatever. I don't know how useful that was, but you can kind of play with printing out the value of sine to get an idea. Maybe what I'll do is move this down into draw. This might get messy, but that's okay. So instead of passing in a hard-coded value, what I'm going to pass in is frame count, which is a variable that p5 gives us, which increases by 1 every time the draw function is called, which happens 60 times a second. So 60 times a second, this increases by 1, and we'll print out the value of sine of that value. So we'll take the sine of the frame count and print it out to the console and see if my computer breaks. Okay, so let me maybe expand this a little bit. So let's just kind of start arbitrarily, maybe here-ish. So yeah, we're at like 0.7, then we go up, then we go back down, we're getting smaller, we hit like basically -1, then we go back up, and you can kind of tell that these numbers are jumping around quite a bit. So we go up to -0.88, and then we go all the way back down to 0.07 in like one step. And that's because the distance between like 1 and 2 and 2 and 3 and 3 and 4 is pretty large in terms of what sine is expecting. So one thing we can do is divide this by a number. So let's say divide by 100. So kind of how I was feeding in 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, I'm going to feed in a smaller number here. Okay, maybe that's enough. And so if I scroll all the way up, so it starts at 0, basically. This is like 0.001. This is sine of 0.001, and gives me a number that's pretty close to 0. And then as the number that I'm passing in increases, the value that sine gives me increases as well. So it goes, it increases all the way until it gets to 1. So here we are at like 0.5. It's increasing, it's increasing. And it eventually reaches pretty much 1 here-ish. And then it starts to fall back down, right? And gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And then it's going to be around 0 here. So we're at 0, and then it's getting negative, and it'll eventually go down to -1, and then bounce back up. So that's the kind of value it gives you. Okay, so that's enough console.log. I think the fun of P5 is that you can get something visual up and running. So let's switch over to that. Because honestly, I don't know how good that explanation was. I think maybe it helps to see it in action. So one thing I might do is just call text. So print the text out, width over 2, height over 2. Maybe we'll see what this does. Yeah, okay. So see, maybe let me increase the text size a little bit. Text size, I don't know, 36. And maybe I'll move this over a little bit just so you can see it a little bit better. Maybe that's too much. All right, so when we start the program, it starts at 0, right? And then it's going up, 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 gets basically to 1, and then goes back down, 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 down. Gets basically to -1, then starts going back up. And one thing to notice, and this is one of the reasons that sine and cosine are so popular in a sort of animation context, is notice, like, how do I explain this? Notice the speed of the change here. So notice how fast the number is changing, and compare how fast it's changing when it's around 0 to how fast it's changing when it's around 1 or -1. So specifically, when it's down near 0, it's actually changing faster. So you might notice that it stays at 0.9 for quite some time, versus when it's at like 0.01, 0.2, 0.3, like it flies through the middle numbers, like 1, 2, and 3. But then at like 7, 8, 9, it slows down, and you see it kind of pause at 9, come back down, fly through 0, and then kind of pause at 9, then go back up and fly through 0. So it has this like variable speed kind of thing where it slows down when it's near the edges, where it's near 1 and -1, and it's faster at 0. So you can kind of think of it like if you toss a ball into the air, when you first throw the ball, it's moving pretty fast, right? It's moving as fast as it's going to move. And then it gets to sort of the top of its arc, and at the very top of its arc, it's not moving very fast. Actually, there's a split second where it's not moving at all. It's just kind of hanging in the air, and then it falls back down, and when it hits your hand again, it's moving pretty fast. So it's kind of a more natural change to the number than if we were like adding 1 to it every time and making it just like constant speed, or doing some kind of fancier stuff. This sine function gives us that behavior right out of the box. So anyway, you can kind of see that in how fast the numbers change and when they change. Okay, so what do I want to think about next? So let's see. So far, what we've done is we have called the sine function with a value, and we've noticed that if we divide by 100, it kind of slows down how fast our number moves. So let me maybe take this out to show you what that looks like kind of more visually. So yeah, that's kind of ridiculous, but like you can see that the number is changing, so much between steps that it kind of doesn't even make sense. So you kind of can't even see the kind of like increasing, decreasing behavior that you can if you divide by 100, or you can slow it down further if we divide by a bigger number. So now it just takes longer to complete that cycle from 1 to -1 and then back again. So you can kind of adjust the speed of the number that's changing. Another thing you can do, so right now we are kind of centered at 0, right? And we are going up to 1 and down to -1. So let's say we wanted to instead go up to 10 and down to -10. And maybe we want to make an animation bigger or something. So the way we can do that is by multiplying. So let me maybe first put this in a variable. So like const value. It's not a good variable name, but it's okay. So frame count divided by 100. This doesn't change the behavior. I'm just kind of making the code a little bit easier to read. So now I should see basically the same thing, and I do. So what I was saying is right now the number is between 1 and -1. We can increase that number by, let's say, multiplying it by 10. So now it's going to give us a value that's between 10 and -10. So you can kind of think of sine as giving us a value between 1 and -1. And so when the value that sine gives us is 1, we're going to multiply by 10, and it's going to be 10. And when it's -1, it's going to be -10. When it's 0, it's going to be 0, and everything in between. So let's do that. So you see that it's going all the way up to 10, and then all the way back down to -10 in the exact same way that it was going to 1 and -1. And this number is kind of up to us. You know, we can change that to 100. It goes all the way up to 100, and then all the way back down to -100. Cool. The other thing we can do, and so far we're just talking about numbers. We haven't really gotten into animation at all yet, but the numbers help with animation. So we've seen getting a value between -1 and 1. We've seen increasing that range to be like between 100 and -100. Next, what we can do is move the center. So right now the center is 0, and we go up to some number or down to some negative of that number. But let's say instead of being around 0, we wanted it to be around, I don't know, 200. So I want it to start at 200 and then go up to 300 and down to 100. So it starts at 200, it goes up, it goes to 300, and then it goes back down, and we'll go all the way down to 100 and go back up all the way to 300, come back down. And so if you think about what's happening on this line, we are taking the sine of some value, which is increasing a little bit each frame, which this part of the line, the sine function, will give us a value between 1 and -1. Then we are multiplying that number by 100, so we'll get something between -100 and +100, and then we are adding 200 to that value, or we're adding that value to 200. Doesn't really matter which way you think about it. So since we're starting at 200 and we're going up to a possible value of 100, we have a max of 300 or a min of 200 plus -100, which gives us 100. That's a lot of like math and numbers and like arithmetic thrown at you, but you can kind of play with these values to get the effect that you want. Okay, so that's kind of numbers and text and the behavior of the function itself. So what I want to do next, I think, is try to use this in an animation. So we have a value right now that's between 100 and 300, and that's kind of not a coincidence because I chose this number pretty intentionally, because this is actually height over 2, because we have a height of 400 here. So I can maybe extrapolate these into some variables in a second, but it's okay. What I want to do is maybe draw a circle from, so an x value of width divided by 2. I'm just going to put it in the middle, and then a y value of value, and then a size. Doesn't really matter what our size is. So let's see what this does. Yeah, there you go. Okay, cool. That worked pretty well, actually. I was expecting something to break horribly. Let me maybe increase this value so it's a little easier to see. So you see our number, which is the value that we're getting. And you know that hasn't changed. It's fluctuating between 100 and 300 using the logic that we wrote here. And I'm also using that number to show a circle at that value. And you can kind of see the, the animated expression of that, what that number looks like visually. So you can kind of see the effect of when it's kind of towards the top or the bottom, it's a little slower, right? And when it's towards the middle, it's moving a lot faster. This is kind of pretty slow, so I can kind of speed it up. So instead of dividing by 100 here, maybe I'll divide by a smaller number, which will speed it up. Like we saw when we were not dividing it at all, it went, you know, all over the place. So this will speed it up. So, you know, I can keep going. I can play with it quite a bit and get it going the speed that I want it to go. But you can see that it's kind of fluctuating, you know, back and forth between the highest number and the lowest number that's possible given our line here. Okay, so I promised that I would show the visualization of what it looks like when you don't divide. So the reason we're dividing, there's mathy reasons for it, but for the animation purposes, it's because if you don't divide it, then the number changes so much that you don't really see it as an animation anymore. And I'll say that this is going to be like quite annoying to look at. So like, just, you know, prepare yourself if that's something that you're bothered by. So let's hit run. And yeah, you see that the circle is moving so fast because the number is changing so much from one frame to the next. So that's why we divide this number. So I liked that 25. That was kind of smooth. Yeah, cool. So we have the sine function being used to give us a value between -1 and 1. We're multiplying that number to make the range larger, and then we are adding a value to that number to recenter it. So we can maybe see the effect of, like, if I hadn't added this value, for example, what would happen? So I'd be centered around 0, which is way up here at the top of the screen. And, you know, maybe that's what you're going for, but it might not be super useful if half of your animation is off the top of the screen, or, you know, the side of the screen or whatever. So that's why we add this value. Okay. What do I want to do next? So right now, what are we doing? We're getting a value that is based on the sine of the frame count variable, which is going to increase by 1 each time. Instead of that, maybe in addition to that, what I might do, so this is right now showing one circle over time. There's another way to think about this, and that is, let me kind of start over down here. Maybe let me group some of this so I can think about it. So maybe I'll start with a for loop. So like for, let's, I don't know, x equals 0, x is less than width, x plus plus. So I have a for loop that loops from 0 all the way over to width, which in this case is 400. And what I want to do is maybe comment some of this out and maybe steal some of it. So instead of basing the value off of frame count, I'm going to base it off of the value of x here. And I'll keep the division in there for now just to see what happens. And then I'm going to do something like this where I draw the circle to the screen. Circle, and instead of width over 2, I'm going to use x. And instead of 100, I'm going to use something much smaller. So now I have this for loop that's looping from x equals 0, which is the left edge of the screen, to width, which is the right edge of the screen, and increasing by 1 each time, which is very similar to the frame count variable, which increases by 1 every frame, only I'm doing it in a for loop instead. Then I am getting a value based on this x variable and drawing that value to the screen with an x position based on this for loop instead of always at width over 2. So let's just see what that looks like. Yeah, okay, cool. So my circle is maybe a little goofy because it has a black stroke, but that's okay because you can see the effect where we start kind of right here at height over 2, which is kind of our center of our animation, then decreases down to whatever this value is. Oh wait, sorry, this is increasing, right. So this is increasing up to height over 2 plus 100 here. And then this is height over 2 minus 100, and it's kind of going back and forth. And you can kind of see that that effect of the, like where I was talking about the ball earlier. So if you think about like when you're down here, or like when you're here in the middle, you throw a ball into the air, and it kind of slows down when it's here at the top. So that's why you see this circle like getting darker here, because there's more circles here. And then here in the middle, it's moving quite fast, and then it slows down again up here. So that's where you get that sort of nice smooth curve. And we can play with this a little bit more since we have this kind of graph here. So let's see what happens if let's see if I don't divide by anything, what happens. This might be fun. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a cool effect, and it's there's a weird I don't know if this is an optical illusion or some kind of artifact of the truth of the sine function that I don't fully grasp, but there's this weird, cool like effect that this pattern. I don't know why that's happening, but this is why we divide that number, because the value is just going all over the place. So let me divide it by quite a large number and see what that does. So yeah, now you see that like we're really kind of zoomed in to the curve, and it's barely like a curve because it's not changing at all. So you can kind of play with a value that makes sense. So 100 gives us just part of the curve. 10 will be kind of in the middle where we get kind of a bunch of curves, but like not so much that it's unreasonable. So it kind of depends on what your end goal is, what values you use here. I think this was 25 before, right? So I kind of like that. And like the 100, let's see if we decrease this to 50, then your curve gets shorter. So these are some options that you can play with, and you can think about it in terms of math. Like I think that this number decides the frequency. So if I go from 25 to 10, that will increase the frequency, which means that you get more curves, more, I don't remember what these are called, but like more revolutions, more cycles from -1 to 1 and then back again. So that's frequency, and then this is amplitude. So the size of your curve is your amplitude. So let's increase our amplitude by increasing the number that we have here. And there's probably a math word for this value, but I just think about it as the number that your curve is centered around. Okay, let's see. What else do I want to kind of point out before I get into my actual goal here? The other thing I want to point out is, so I am using x here as a couple of different things here. So I'm looping from x is 0 to x is width, and then I'm passing that value in as the argument into sine, and then I am using that x value again as the x value to our circle, and that gives us a graph. If you use the x value as the input and as the place that you draw the circle, but you don't have to. It's kind of up to us. So let's say, for example, what if I did, I don't know, mouse x plus x, something like that. And now you can see that it doesn't have to be 1-to-1. It can be, you can play with the value after you get it. It's not tied to you can do stuff after it's generated. So maybe maybe this is useful. If you don't want to be tied to only showing the result at the coordinate that was the input, that'd be pretty restrictive. So I did it here just to kind of show the graph, but you don't need to, and we'll see an example of that once I kind of get started. But I didn't want you to think that you have to use this value here and here, because you don't. It's kind of whatever makes sense for your animation. Okay, that's kind of a lot, and I honestly don't know how useful any of it was, but I wanted to talk about like how I think about the sine function before I start using the sine function, because a lot of this stuff that I just played with is stuff that I play with when I'm using it in an animation. So I wanted to introduce like the way I think about it, because once I start getting into the actual animation that I want to do, I'm probably going to fly through that stuff without really thinking about it, because this is just what I do when I'm thinking about creating an animation using the sine function. Okay, So let me maybe, what do I want to do? I want to maybe get rid of this for loop. Yeah, let's go back to the old-fashioned circle. And do I want text anymore? Nah, I don't think I need to draw it anymore. So let's go back to our circle. And so what we have is our handy circle that's using the sign function and the ideas that we had already talked about to bounce back and forth between two values. And let's see, so maybe I'll try to talk a little bit more about what I meant when I said that you don't have to necessarily use the value as the input and the output. So let's say I do something like, let's create a new variable and maybe call it like circle X, and maybe I'll set it down in setup here. Text size, I don't know if I need anymore. I will probably need it again, but for now I'll just get rid of it. Circle X equals width. I'll start it at width. And then what do I want to do? I want to say width minus minus here. So I'm going to decrease width by 1 each time. Or not width, sorry, circle X. Circle X minus minus. So I'm going to decrease circle X, and then I'm going to use that here. Circle X. So now my circle, instead of being at width over 2, which is right in the center, it's going to be at circle X, and it's going to start on the right edge of the screen and move left each frame. I think this might end up being too fast, but we can play with it. Oh no, it's not bad. Okay, so you see that it kind of started at the right edge of the screen and kind of animates up and down and kind of bobs. It's kind of funky, kind of hanging out. And then, keeps decreasing and eventually goes off the left edge of the screen, and that's it because we haven't done anything. I can add an if statement here that says like if circle X is less than 0, then circle X equals width. So start it back over at the right, something like that. So we start over at the right, and we're using that sign function to get that nice wave up and down. And then when we reach the left edge, we pop back over to the right. Because my circle is so big, the popping back to the right is kind of obnoxious, kind of obvious. So what I might do is say, maybe if this is less than -100, then I'm going to actually pop it over to width plus 100. So it's going to go off the edge of the screen and then pop back over like off the right edge of the screen. So we've got our funky bobbing circle. It's going to go off the left edge of the screen and then pop back over to the right edge of the screen. That took maybe a half a second too long. So maybe what I'll do is decrease these numbers, something like this. These are all numbers you can play with, and it's probably not super interesting to see me like nitpick at the numbers I use here, but it's the kind of thing you can do. I actually like that quite a bit. As soon as it goes off the left edge, it pops back over to the right edge. Yeah, cool. And, again, you can play with this stuff. So let's say we want to increase its speed. So that's its up and down speed. So that's decreasing its speed. You can play with that. I can increase it. Wait, oh no, I started at 25. Right. So if I want to increase it, I divide by a smaller number. So it's going quite a bit faster. If I want to increase the left to right speed, I can change this to like a minus equals, whatever, 5. Right now it's 1, so I'll increase it by 5-fold. So there's quite a bit faster. So you can kind of think about these numbers as, the input to your animation. So you can play with speed of, either your X speed, your left and right speed, or your Y speed, your up and down speed, or like how big the cycle is. So right now it's 100. So if I decrease this like 50, this is just applying the same ideas we've seen, just in an animation instead. But I kind of liked the 100. Maybe a little too fast. Okay. So that's a circle moving, and that's good. That's progress, I think. This is already getting we're getting to the idea of what I wanted to show. And so I am showing something that's kind of waving in from the right to the left. But what I actually want to show is a word or message, kind of letter by letter, that kind of follows the path. Okay. So what I want to do maybe is create a message variable. Again, not a great variable name, but that's okay. And I'll start it with something generic, happy coding, whatever. And maybe instead of calling it circle X, I'll call it like text X. Still started over at width, text X equals width. And while I'm here, do I want to change this to like Y, maybe text Y? Sure. And then instead of circle, what I want is the text function again, and I'll have this be message, and this is text X, text Y, and I don't think it takes this parameter. So I got my message, I've got my X, and I've got my Y. I think I might have broken something. I don't know why it's not the same color, but I'm sure we'll find out in a second. So while I'm here, I'll just update this variable name, text X, text X, text X. Yeah. All right, I'm sure I broke something, but let's run and see what error message I get. Oh no. All right. So that's closer, I think. You see that the message is animating in from the right, kind of going up and down, and we do see that same effect that we saw before, where you kind of see it pop off the left edge because of the logic we're using here. So I could increase this number, but for a second, I think I'm not going to care about it because I'm going to fix it later, and I'm going to adjust some things along the way anyway. So for example, I'm going to increase the text size again, back up to like 36 or so. Okay, and it's going to be real obvious now. Yeah. Okay, so I have the whole message going. That's cool. But what I want is the letters. I want the letters to follow the path, not just be like, one line of text all aligned the same on the same line. So what I'm going to need to do is another for loop for let, I guess I'm just going to call this like I kind of don't like I as a loop variable. I know that's kind of blasphemy, but so I'm going to actually call it like letter index equals 0, letter index is less than, message dot, I always forget, I think it's length, it might be size, and then letter index plus plus. And this is why people like I as a variable name, because you don't have to deal with this line wrap kind of situation. But let's do it this way. Whatever, you can introduce white space to your code to make it a little bit more readable, but this is still for loop. So I'm going to draw the letters. Let me maybe start by kind of doing something similar here. So what I want to do is draw text of, so I want the letter at this letter index. So can I do like let's do I dare just try something? Let's try something. Let's do like message at letter index. I don't think this is going to work, but JavaScript might be weird enough to let us do that. And I'm going to keep it at text X, text Y, just to see. I know that that's wrong, but I just want to see what it does. And I actually think that this is going to break. So let's just see. Okay, actually that did something. So it drew all of the letters, I think, at the same position. So they're just kind of printed over top of each other, which is not what we want, but actually not so super far away from what we want either. So let me do something like text X plus letter index times some number. I don't know. I'm going to maybe change that in a second, but yeah, okay, cool. So, there's some goofiness here, but it's kind of working. I'm drawing each letter individually. And you know what? Honestly, this is going to be annoying for you probably, but I am going to change this back because this the annoyingness of how long these lines are getting is bothering me. So let me just do I and I here. So I'm not changing the code. I'm just changing the variable name. Okay. So I've got my message drawn line or letter by letter, and it's following that curve. And we've got quite a few problems here. There's weird spacing issues because I'm just treating it as a monospace font, even though it's not. And I'm popping off the left edge too soon, and the letters aren't following the path. They're just kind of in a line, but we're getting there. So what do I want to tackle next? Let me think about that while I hydrate. Okay, so I think the next thing I want to do is I want to do the waviness, because I think that some of the spacing issues might be affected by that waviness. So what do I want to do? I've got my text Y here. Maybe what I can do is calculate this inside of the for loop. Let's see. Text Y equals height over 2 plus sine of frame count divided by 25 times 100. So I think what I want to do is something like, we're gonna have to experiment quite a bit, and this math might get a little gross, but just to see, I'm going to add I to frame count. Yeah, so that the from H, the H is going to be the same thing because it's frame count plus 0. The A is going to be frame count plus 1. The first P is going to be frame count plus 2. So this is going to get what would have been like the next value from the sine function. And let's just see what this does. I don't know if this will work. Sort of. Not quite, but sort of. That's I don't really know how to explain what's happening. Okay, I think it's kind of like so since we're getting the next value from sine, it's like the A is like looking ahead to where the H will be, whereas what we actually wanted was where the H was. So I think maybe I want to subtract this. And that's closer. There's still something kind of wonky, because it's not. Oh, I know what it is. Okay, so this I think I understand what's happening, but let me try if I can. Let me try to explain it in human words. Okay, so if you think about the H is actually, let me just start the message with H. Maybe this will be easier to think about. It's just an H. I think all the rest of my code will work. So if you think about the H, it's moving 60 pixels a second, right? Actually, no, more than that. So it's moving 2 pixels a frame. So it's moving 120 pixels per second. And so it moves like fewer pixels than the H is in size. And it's hard to explain, but like it's not like it's jumping an entire letter space each time. It's kind of smoothly going up and down and left and right because of the values that we're passing in. So now let me add the A in, and the A, it maybe this is fine, but it's not quite what I was expecting. But so the A is kind of just hanging out like pretty close to the H. I mean, vertically, the horizontal stuff is coming from this number, so that's my fault. but the sort of the vertical closeness, like from the H to the A is pretty much aligned with the H, but just off by a little bit. And that's because we are getting the previous value of H, which was only a couple pixels away. Whereas I might have intuitively expected, or what I'm actually going for is for the A to be like one letter space away, kind of vertically. So that's kind of why the A is hanging out so close to the H, and why the rest of the letters are kind of doing the same thing. So from one letter to the next, it's not moving very much vertically, because each step of the animation, the letters only move a little bit. So the H only moves a little bit each frame. So I warned you that this math was going to get gross, but what we might do is multiply this I by this number. Maybe. And this is where we get into my complicated relationship with these kinds of things. I don't actually know if this is right. I don't actually know if I can tell you why it would be right if it is. I just have a gut feeling that this is like close to what I should do. And it's always wrong, but it's always what I try. So let's just see what happens. And oh man, that's actually pretty cool. So it's not quite what I'm going for, but I do like that effect. I am going to change this because this is annoying me. I'm going to kind of make this arbitrary. These are just magic numbers that I'm going to change eventually, but I'm going to kind of give it a chance to go off the left edge of the screen a little bit more before it pops over. It's still doing that, but we can at least kind of see it for a minute before it does that. Okay, I kind of dig this. So we have, from the H to the A, you have quite a bit of vertical distance now. And I do think that it is working the way I expected it. So we're getting, where the H was when it was where the A is now, if that makes sense. So if you think about like where the A is, this is really hard to explain. Can I maybe decrease the frame rate to explain this? Will this work, or will this be really annoying? Probably be really annoying. Let's try 2. Okay, so it's going to be pretty slow, but whatever. Think about where the H is right now. Okay, and now kind of watch where the A goes. And no, that didn't do what I thought it would do. Oh, I know why that is. Oh man, I'm using so many magic numbers in here that it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. So like this 25, I kind of was estimating at how many pixels wide these letters are, and I'm wrong. We can tell by how much space there is kind of horizontally that this number isn't quite right, and it's going to be different for each letter. So like I is obviously a lot skinnier than like an H, but none of this matters. What's happening is that the value that we are passing in for each letter is a little bit back on the sine wave compared to where the H was. So we start by calculating where on the sine wave is H, and then we go to the next letter and we say, so based on where that H is, let me subtract some number based on which letter I'm at. So subtract 25 for each letter, and pass that into sine. So like subtract that number from frame count. So say where would the H have been in the A case 25 frames ago, and that will be the position of the A. And then for the next letter, it's where was the H 50 frames ago? Where was the H 75? Where was it 100 frames ago? And we get this kind of goofy alignment because the letters are not you know, the letters don't actually have these sizes that I'm passing in, so they kind of look a little bit goofy. But I kind of dig it, actually. I kind of like the effect. So although it might not make super mathematical sense, I kind of like what it looks like. And so what I actually might do is start putting some of these in variables so that I can play with them a little bit better. So what I might say is, so let me just think about some of this. So like const, what did I call it? Word, message, and text. So like, I'm trying to think of a name for these variables, honestly. So like this 100 should probably be a variable. And let's call it like, I don't know, vertical. Wait, what did I call it earlier? Amplitude? Sure, let's call it that. Amplitude equals 100. I don't know if that's actually the amplitude. I think the amplitude would actually be from the middle, but it doesn't matter. That actually might work. Who cares? Nothing should change. I'm just moving these into variables to make them easier to play with. So the center is always going to stay the same, and then I can play with these numbers. So maybe this 25, what did this represent? So what happens if I increase this or move this to 10? Ooh, that's very close to what I want, actually. Oh man, that's cool. So, sorry, let me not get distracted. So let me put this back to 25 and change this one to 10. So this one changes the vertical speed, right? So let's call that whatever, const y speed, something like that equals, and what do I want it to be? So 10, if I go from 10, y speed, so that's 10, but if I increase this, it actually slows it down, doesn't it? Yeah, so I don't want it to be speed, or maybe what I can do is, yeah, let's do, can I do times y speed and make it a decimal? Let's try. So times y speed and make it 0.1, whatever it was, whatever. So that's 10-ish, so maybe if we make it 0.2, that will speed it up, right? Yeah, okay, cool. So I can make it like 0.05, which I think will make it like 0.2. Yeah, okay. So y speed is just, you know, bigger numbers will make it bigger, faster, smaller numbers will make it smaller, you know, it doesn't really matter. Okay, and then this is, I think, where the magic will start to happen. And this is, what is this? This is like letter speed, or like letter distance, or like letter vertical distance, something like that. So like const letter spacing, vertical letter spacing, maybe. Yeah, let's try that. Vertical letter spacing equals what? So this is another one of those goofy ones where it's 25 now. Actually, no, that works. So let's start it at 25 and then change that to this. Okay, so if I do the auto code, will it actually auto format it nicely? Kinda. I think this could probably be formatted in a better way, but let me maybe try some of that. Maybe put this multiplier down here. You know, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm convinced that's easier to read, but whatever. What do you want? Oh, calm down. Let me just see what this looks like right now. Okay. One thing I could do is, you know, maybe split this into multiple lines as well. So like const letter offset maybe equals this. Or maybe I could call that letter input or something, but like letter offset. And then I can maybe lose some of this white space. Yeah, okay, that's not gross. It's not super gross. This is kind of gross, but that's okay. Yeah, okay, I don't hate it. So let's just see what this does. Shouldn't really change. Okay, cool. So what else can I do? I can change this. I can put this in a variable. So we've got X speed. We've got Y speed. Let's make an X speed equals, what's it at 2 right now? Yeah, X speed. Okay. And letter offset is, oh, it's the variable I just created. And so this value I might play with. So this is getting pretty close to what I want. Let's change this to a 10 because that seemed to be the magic number that got us pretty close to what I had originally planned. That's cool. So the last thing I want to kind of perfect is the horizontal positioning. So right now the horizontal positioning is based off of this 25, and I have some options. I could, one option is do nothing and just keep it this way. Another option is to put it in a variable like I've done for these to make it kind of easier to play with. But I think what I want to do instead is look at the reference for a function I don't remember. Get like text width or something. Yeah. Yeah, text width will give you the width of some string. So you can use it for like kind of exactly this use case of needing to line up text based on what that text is. So like see the I, between the I and the N, it's, obvious that there's another extra space there, and like between the H and the A, it's obvious that there probably should be more space. So the big letters are not far apart enough, and the skinny letters are too far apart. And that's because we're just hard coding this 25 right now. Instead, I should probably base it off of the width of the text. Okay. And so, how do I want to do that? I don't know. Don't ask me. What I want to do is I'm going to get a substring. So I know there's substring in JavaScript. Is there something in here? Substring? No. So JavaScript, substring, something like this. Substring, yeah, maybe. Oh, okay, so that's all that is. Okay, so what do I want? I think I just want, let's find out. I want, so I want like a const text x. So where's text x? Text x is the left edge of the word itself. So what I want is like letter x equals text x plus text width, which is the p5 function of some string, which is going to be message dot substring of from 0, which is the beginning of the word, to I, right? Yeah, to I, to the letter that we're at. I don't know if that's inclusive, but we will find out shortly. And then I want to change this to letter X. Yeah, cool. That actually worked pretty perfectly. So you kind of see like between the H and the A, and then look at the I, between the D, I, and the N. The horizontal spacing of the letters is based on the actual size of the letters, which, that's important when you're aligning text. And yeah, this is pretty close to what I was going for. Let me maybe change some of these variable names. So like letter, this shouldn't be text Y, it should be the letter Y. Letter Y. Let me maybe rearrange these a little bit. So like letter X comes first. So I calculate X first, and then I calculate Y, and then I draw it. Yeah, okay. Maybe. Yeah, it's not bad. The other thing I could do is this -250 is kind of arbitrary right now. So I could do negative text width of the whole message, I think. And then, so I started over at 50, which is fine because it's just kind of arbitrarily off the left edge of the screen. It doesn't, that's not based on the width or anything. So let's see if this kind of smoothly goes the whole way off the edge and then pops back over. Yeah, it does. Cool. Okay. Yeah, cool. I could try to get fancy maybe and like pop the H back over as soon as it's off the screen, even though the other letters are still on, but I'm not going to do that. This is already kind of gross enough. Okay, so we've got the sort of the fundamentals set up. Let me maybe just kind of do a once over and read through the code to make sure it's readable. So I might rearrange some of these values, some of these variables. So text x, should I call that like word x maybe? Yeah, let's change this to word x. And should I change this to, I should either change it to word x or maybe message x. Because I've got letter and I've got message, or maybe I've got letter and word. Oh, this is 2 words, right? So, all right, now I'm just being real nitpicky, but welcome to my brain. Text x, so it's going to be message x. So yeah, all right. So now I'm thinking in terms of either the message or the letter, and that makes sense. So just being kind of consistent with my variable names to make it a little bit more followable. Message x, I'm probably forgetting one, but we'll see in a second. Okay, cool. And now, kind of to test that this is all working, what I can do is change the text size, and it should work. The vertical spacing might get a little bit wonky, but we can fix that in a second, maybe. No, I don't. I think that's fine, actually. Cool. What I might do with this vertical letter spacing is, similar to text width, I think I can get like text. So there's no text height because you have to like add some numbers together, but it's like some combination. So it's like text ascent plus text descent, maybe something like that. I don't know what this text leading is. What is this? Oh, this is between lines. Okay. So yeah, I think if I added, where'd that go? If I added text ascent and text descent together, I think that might give me the height of each letter. Maybe something like that. And then I could use that instead of the 10 here, similar to how I used, where did I use that? I used the text width here. So, instead of vertical letter spacing, I could use the actual height of the text, but I don't think I care. I think I actually like how it looks right now. I will add a semicolon. Yeah, I like that. And like we were playing with at the very beginning, we could change some of these values, but all right, hold on, I'm getting distracted. Let me go back and read through this code like I was before I started changing variable names. So I've got message, I've got X speed, Y speed. Maybe I'll move this up. Yeah, why not? I think I might have just moved it down and moved it back up, but that's fine. So I've got message and then message X and then X and Y speed, amplitude, and then vertical letter spacing. I think that's a reasonable order to put them in. I start message X over on the right edge of the screen. I draw a background, it's fine. I loop over every letter. I don't love that this is I, but I'm kind of working with some restricted screen real estate to make this video hopefully visible on your computer, but it's all good. So letter X equals message X plus text width. Maybe I can add some comments. I don't know. Is this understandable? Let's see. So I don't know. The comment would just be like, get the letter X, and that's not super important. That's not informative because that's what this variable name is telling you. But some of this is kind of gross looking, so I'm kind of thinking about how I could clean that up. So letter offset, maybe I just say like letter offset is whatever. Maybe I say like vertical letter offset. Letter Y offset. You know, I don't know if it matters too much. Now I'm staring at it. I think it's probably okay. Letter offset is just I times some number, so, and then you feed it directly into this. So I don't know. You could maybe think about, you know, what's confusing about this code and maybe put that into a comment in the code if, you know, if you're bothered by it. But I think for my purposes, because I have gone through the effort of replacing pretty much every magic number with a magic variable, I probably don't ever have to look at this code ever again, because, you know, if I have to make a different animation, what I'll do is I'll just play with these numbers instead of going back down here into the logic. But, you know, it's kind of up to you, personal preference and stuff. Whether you add comments and whatnot, but I'm going to leave it for now. Plus, it probably wouldn't be super exciting to watch me sit here and add comments to my code. Okay. Anyway, so far this is cool. This is an animation with a kind of generic message, just happy coding, because that's my go-to. You know, this could be anything we want. We could say hello world. We could do, I don't know, hello world. But what I really wanted was some spookiness. So let's try something like spooky. Do I want an exclamation point? We'll find out. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's cute. And clearly I want different colors. So let's see, how do I want to do this? So my background could be 32 and my fill could be 255. Could just make it darker like that. You know, I don't hate it. I could maybe make it orange. So I always like to play a game where I guess at the RGB and then I'm wrong and then I go look it up. So I'm trying to get to orange. So what would that be? That would be very R, very B, and a little G, RGB, something like that. No, not at all. Not even a little bit. Oh, I have that backwards, don't I? Very R, very G, and a little B. Maybe. Actually, I think it's more like very R, kind of G, kind of not really B. I think I'm going to get closer. Yeah. That's actually not a bad little orange. So just thinking in terms of like mixing paint, well, it's like mixing additive paint, light paint. If I think about what orange is, it's very red and it's got some like yellow in it, which in our case will be like green, and then B, like not really, but just to kind of lighten it up, I put it to 50. But you can play with these numbers to get the effect that you want. You know, I kind of like that actually. Maybe I'll make them computery numbers. Yeah, maybe it's too yellowy. Whatever. You can play with it. Not bad. Actually, I'm pretty happy with that. I could go the other way, actually. Let's try that. So maybe background of that, fill of that. Let's see what this looks like. Okay. You know, I like that. I like that actually. But there's another thing I want to do before I kind of go down this, before I decide my colors. So the other thing I want to play with is the font. So I actually played around with the font yesterday. So if you want to focus on changing the font of something in P5, then check out my previous video, or come to happycoding.io, come to examples, go to P5 examples, and somewhere in here will be typography. And this code, this video and this code will show you how to change the font of text in P5. The other way to look at it would be to read about it in the P5 reference. So if I look at load font, this will also tell me. So I've kind of done this homework ahead of time. So I'm going to, what am I going to do? So what I've done before this video is I went and I purchased a font, and I went to, let me see, so Eve Some Pics is this person I follow on Twitter who does a lot of like indie font work, which I think is a really cool kind of like niche to fill. I think it's really neat that someone's out there creating these fonts for folks to use. And I found that they had, where is it, this horror font bundle, and I bought this and I downloaded it. So that's the sort of homework I've done ahead of time. And so I have that file somewhere. Where is that? That's probably in my desktop, probably. Yeah. And so I'm going to unzip that here, and then I'm going to upload some of those files to my P5 editor. Yeah, okay. Upload file. Can I upload a bunch? So I want to play with a few of these. So, all right, cool. That's going to work. So bear with me while I do the kind of manual labor of just uploading a bunch of files. Got that font, morning. You know, the other way I could have done this is to pick it out ahead of time and just stick with one, but this is maybe a realistic view of what creating this kind of animation looks like. It's playing around with a bunch of different options and seeing which one you like best. So you're stuck with it. Well, you are stuck with watching me figure out what I want to do. All right, this is a fun problem where like the done button or whatever it is down there isn't visible, but that's okay. I think these are all done. Okay, so what I want to do is go to this load font function, steal some code, and put that somewhere like here and say like let my font, I'm just going to call it font equals, and then I've got these options here. So can you tell me what you're called? Oops. All right, so I'm going to load this font from this file, and then I'm going to say text font. Okay, so that should change the font of my spooky message to the buried extended, which is going to be this creepy looking one. I mean, they're all kind of creepy looking, but this particularly creepy looking one. Let's see if that works. I'm very happy with that. That's really cool. Yeah, that's already cool. I like that a lot. But let me play with some options. Let me maybe copy this code a bunch of times because I'm going to want to try each one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Probably better ways to do this, but there's probably a better way to do most things that I do. I wonder how Eve comes up with these names. You saw how hard of a time I had coming up with like 3 variable names, let alone names for all of these fonts, which have like different styling and stuff. Props, man. Okay, so really all I wanted to do was like see which of these fonts I like the best. I already like this one a lot, so this is the one to beat. That's kind of cool too. I think I still like the first one better. I think because of all these O's. I think I think the list of O's looked cooler with the first one. Let's just see. I mean, this is kind of cool too. This reminds me of like an old like 90s like horror FPS back in the day. Let's see, what's this one? I mean, that one's cool too. I'm going to have to revisit that one and compare that to the first one. Ah, man, these are all cool. So I already forgot which my winners were. So I know I liked the first one, and I know I liked the last one, and now I don't remember which of these it was. Oh my god, this is probably really annoying to watch, but thanks for sticking with it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, all these are really cool. So you know what I might do? Can I randomize this? One thing I wanted to do was focus this video on like not using anything more complicated than a for loop. So this is maybe behind the scenes stuff, but whether I do something is going to depend on where that concept lies in these tutorials. Let's see. So if we're using for loops, okay, so we haven't gotten to arrays yet. Okay. Let's do it a different way. No, you know what? I think for, I don't know, simplicity's sake, I think I should really just pick one and stick with it. So there's a couple of ways I could do this. I could just pick one, which is what I should do. Or I could do something like put these in variables. I could do something like, can I create like a constant variable? It's like the name of the font, randomize that maybe. No, this is, you're getting so silly. So you can see like the kinds of things that I get kind of nerd sniped by. Like I could spend an hour staring at these different fonts and picking my favorite one and comparing like left and right and like taking a screenshot, and you know, I love that stuff. I could spend forever on it, but I know that it does not make for a very interesting video because I'm just going to go back and forth a bunch of times. So just for the sake of getting something, I'm going to say this is done. That's chosen. I will come back and more carefully pick one after I finish this video, after I sign off. But for now, I'm going to say good enough. Let's pretend that this is the one I am picking. Okay, whatever. So if you're following along, then you know you can play with your own fonts. Maybe go purchase the same font package from Eve. There's actually a couple of horror ones, so you could maybe check out a different spooky font. Or, you know, maybe if you're not going for spooky, maybe you're going for sci-fi. Maybe you check out some sci-fi options. Or, you know, many options here. So check them out and play with them. So that's you know, you can also go down that same rabbit hole. But that's looking pretty good. That's pretty close to what I was going for. Let me maybe play with a couple of numbers. So I mentioned this last time. I have a habit of sticking with like multiples of 12 here, even though that's super out of date. So let's maybe increase the size quite a bit. Ooh, I do like that. And another thing I could do is what? Oh, one thing I know I want to do, and I want to make sure I don't forget to do this, is to credit Eve for creating this font. So a couple ways I can do that. I could maybe do it directly in P5. I could maybe have like some text down here, like let's see, so like text size, maybe make it smaller. Again, I'm sticking with values that I probably don't need to care about, but like whatever, I could say like text font by, and then put their like Twitter account, so at some pics. Yep, and then something like, I don't know, 25, and then height minus 25, and then what I would need to do is put this text size 100 at the top of draw so that it doesn't get stuck the first time I change it. All right, let's just see what this looks like. You know, that's not bad. That actually might be what I end up doing. Maybe I'll change the fill to something that's less, you know, intrusive. One of them, both of them. You know, maybe something like that. Maybe it's more like font fill, like maybe it's darker, you know, something like that. Maybe, and I could make it so that maybe when you click on it, it opens their Twitter. Another thing I could do is, you know, it's maybe getting a little bit outside the bounds of where I wanted to, you know, what I wanted to show in this video, but I could jump over here to the index. And what do I want to do? I could maybe have like a p tag or something. So font by some pics, and maybe I'll add a link there. Let me see where this ends up going. Oh, it's actually at the top. All right, I thought maybe I could make it down at the bottom. And I can, but this video is probably already way too long. Yeah, way too long. So I'm gonna stick with this in P5 kind of thing. So forget that. I'm gonna stick with this. It's down there in the lower left. I kind of like that, okay. What do you think? Yeah, okay. Let me, oh, you know what I'm going to do? So first of all, I think I already covered this. Yeah. So if you're learning about for loops or whatever, you've already learned about input, and I'm just going to make it so when you click anywhere, you go. I actually don't know where they would want me to send them. This is listed first, but that's just because that's itch. So do they have like a home page? Could just link them to Twitter. Could link them here. I mean, this is the store, so maybe I'll link here. So what do I want to do? I want to maybe add a little mouse clicked function or something. So function mouse clicked, and I don't remember the syntax for this. So what I'm going to do is something I do all the time, and I'm going to steal some code from myself. So I know I made an example of this before. Where would I put that? Here. So here, I'll just window that open. Oh, okay, right. It's a JavaScript thing. Okay. So window.open to Eve's store. Yeah. So now I'm going to click. It should open the store. Okay, and you know, I'm doing this because I think it's really important to credit artists and other people when you use their stuff. So it might seem like I'm spending a lot of time on this, and you know, maybe I am, but I do think it's important. I could add an if statement around this so that it only happens when you click down there, but I don't care. Okay, we're getting pretty close to, like, you know, diminishing returns. So one thing I want to play with, I just want to see what happens if I add an emoji here. I don't know what will happen. I don't know if it'll work at all. Maybe it'll just be like a square thing or like a question mark. Yeah, just a square thing. So what I could do, I could just not care. It's always an option to just not care. I think what I would have to do is, once I get through the letters, I would switch the font to something more generic. that does support emojis. Do I care? Maybe I don't care. Yeah, I think I don't care. I'm just not going to care. Look at that. Problem solved by not caring. It's not a good lesson to teach people. I mean, maybe it is. Scoping is important. So, I could spend another 15 minutes making emojis work, but I don't think I want to, because this is already like quite close to what I had in my brain when I sat down to code up today's like Halloween code word spooky animation thing. I never know what to call stuff, but this is very close to what I had in my brain. Let's see. Another thing we could do is maybe add some randomness. So yeah, let me play with that a little bit real quick and then kind of call it. So what I could do, I don't know, let's do it here. Let's say like random -1010. I don't know if this might make them too jittery, but we'll see. So random -1010. Is that enough? Closing parentheses, yeah. So now I'm like just kind of moving the letters a little bit off of this kind of smooth path, and it might end up looking real jittery, but we'll see. That's ridiculous. That's so dumb. Look at that. I mean, it's kind of spooky, but for a different reason. Like, what is this guy doing? That's really hilarious to me. Maybe I'll decrease this this number. That's so funny. You know what? Maybe not. I don't know. You can play with it, but I don't think I like it. Yeah, nah. Random's always a fun thing to try, but yeah, sometimes it's too random. What else could I do? I could maybe play with the, instead of random, it's what's it called, noise. Maybe something like this, where it gives you that smoother kind of animated randomness, but meh, I kind of like this. Well, not this. I don't like that. I kind of like this. You can kind of imagine different applications of this, different ways to use this kind of spooky, wavy text. Maybe you have a character. Maybe you are, maybe you've worked through some of the examples already, and you have a beautiful jack-o'-lantern, and you want to have the jack-o'-lantern be saying something spooky. Maybe you could combine these two sketches to have your words coming from your jack-o'-lantern. Or other things. Maybe it's not spooky, like we said before. Just change the font, and it's no longer spooky. Maybe it's sci-fi or just kind of fun. Okay, but I think this is pretty good. I think this is close. Very close to what I wanted, and it's an application of using the sign function in an animation to create this kind of smooth animated curve of stuff going up and down, or up and down in this case, or you could also go left and right, which is what the ghost example did that we saw at the beginning. It's the same idea. The ghost goes left and right using sine or cosine, and you can see like the individual kind of circles that the ghost is made of, they follow the path in the same way that the letters follow the path here. So different applications for the sine function. It's pretty handy. Cool. So I think that's where I'm going to end it. I'm going to sign off and maybe go see if my neighbors have any candy let out for the trick-or-treaters. But yeah, I like this. So as always, if you have questions, either questions or ideas, or what you are working on, if you want to share what you are working on, I would love to see any of that. So post a comment in the comment section below, or even better, come to happycoding.io, come to our forum, and this is where I generally hang out. You could also hit me up on Twitter and all that good stuff. I think all those links are over here. So don't be a stranger, and come say hi, and I'd love to see what you do with anything that you saw in this video. So, all right, for now I'm going to say thanks for watching. Have a great, happy, spooky Halloween, and as always, of course, spooky coding. So dumb.